everybody. Welcome back. This is episode 8. And for this episode, we are going to be doing an interfaith dialogue, which I have done many of them throughout my life. Well, throughout the last like 8, 9 years. And T and Trey are a little new to this, so it's excited. I'm excited to see it. Um, Usually, starting off an interfaith dialogue, it usually starts off as like introducing yourself and introducing your worldview. We kind of already know each other, but for this one, we're just going to start off with what is your worldview and how has it evolved? And for those who don't know, worldview, the way I like to describe it in my own words, is essentially how does your faith or your spirit, whatever, influence the way that you view the world? So if it's about you in a specific religion, like I'm Christian and I see the world through the way Jesus Christ sacrificed himself with the sins, and that's your worldview. Or if it's like, oh, I see my worldview, I understand the world through earthly things, so connecting everything back to nature. There's many answers you can give, but it's basically how you connect with the world and view the world. That's your worldview. So what is that and how has that evolved?
For me, my worldview, I thought very long and hard about this because I didn't know initially when I saw the question, but I see the world in a very communal sense. I'm very open minded and I see us as like a big community. And I think that is similar to how, like, in my faith, how I always viewed it as well. Like, it was a community. Um, I'll get more into this later, but like the building itself really influenced a lot of my upbringing in my faith. So yeah.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
So for me, I'm Muslim and I was born and raised Muslim, and I think the ways in which it evolved has always been like me being Muslim and my faith, the spirituality that comes with Islam was something very subconscious. And then at a certain point, it evolved into something that was very intentional and a conscious aspect of my life, like something I actually think through and I consider when making decisions. I feel like beforehand I was kind of just like, oh, I'm Muslim, born and raised, I went to Quran class, Prophet Muhammad, like all these things. It was just there, but I think now it's more intentional, like the way I think about it and incorporate it into my life and my view of the world.
Okay, so I'm Hindu, so that has shaped my worldview, I guess. But I also feel that in most modern Hindu families, and I say this in a very loose way. I use the word modern in a very loose sense. Um, Growing up, you're taught to pray, you're taught to be good, you're taught how to be kind to others, but it's not exactly the center of your um, it's not the center of your entire life, in the sense that it's more like it's a very private thing. So my worldview has always been that all beings, animate, inanimate, everything has good in it and therefore deserves respect. So I think that has influenced my worldview. It has changed with time in the sense that I've become more conscious of my identity as a Hindu. Um, and my upbringing, first in Dubai and then in India, has influenced the way I see my community as well. So we can delve more into it later, but it's mostly Hindu. I believe that there's good in everything and everything and everybody deserves respect.
That. Um, so then now that we know each other's worldviews and we understand this, like the foundations of who we are, the first question I kind of want to dive into is what experiences have you guys had with other faiths and what experiences do you want to have? Because we all just described 3 different worldviews. We all just described 3 different ways of interacting with people, interacting with that beyond us, that within us. So what experiences have you had communicating or working with people of different worldviews or different faiths? And then are there any experiences that you want to have? Are there any things that you want to do when it comes to like taking part in someone else's worldview or getting to know someone else's worldview?
Hmm.
So growing up, I'm Christian. I grew up in a African Methodist Episcopal Church, AME. But my dad grew up Catholic, and so I don't know much about like um Cath, Catholicism.
Catholicism. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. Take a breath.
Sorry.
I don't know much about Catholicism, but one thing I always noticed, like growing up, after we would like pray over food, like me, my mom, and brothers, we would say amen, and then we would just like start eating. But my dad would say amen and then do the sign of the cross before he started eating. And I remember it was different from what me, my mom, and brothers were doing. So I would ask, but he now goes to the AME church, has been for years. So I don't know much about it, but that was just always something that I kind of like noticed. I haven't had as many interactions with other faiths outside of like if maybe my friends were a different faith, I would occasionally like see it. I went to a bar mitzvah like in middle school. That was one experience. So it's like very brief moments, nothing extended at all. But I haven't really thought about any that I necessarily want to do more. And I'm always open minded to learn. It's not something that I've thought a lot about. Um, but yeah, I would love to be exposed more. And I love learning more, even as you guys talk about things, conversations that we've had. I always find it interesting. Um, but yeah, I admittedly don't have a lot of experience with other faiths.
That's fair. Many people don't. We're pretty, I was going to use the word segregated. I feel like that's a little extreme. But whatever word below segregated, that's what I feel like we are. I just can't think of it.
Hmm.
Separated?
I guess separated,
Yeah.
segmented.
Segmented.
Mm, that's a good one too. Either way, it's very common for people to just not have those experiences. Also because I don't know if you guys have heard this. Well, Shreya, I don't know if you would have because it's an American saying, but T, when people say two things you don't talk about at the dinner table, it's religion and politics. Have you ever
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
heard
we've
that?
heard it. Yeah.
Yeah? Okay,
Yeah.
so like also there's a whole saying telling you not to talk about other faiths and other religions. Like
Yeah.
it's literally ingrained in us that we're supposed to keep those things separate from building connections with people. So it makes sense. Like it tracks, is all I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah. Okay. Hmm. What has my experience been with other faiths? Actually, I grew up with other faiths, right? Because I grew up in a country where it was an Islamic country, a very secular Islamic country, but a secular Islamic country, and India, where you have people of different religions everywhere. So it was never something that I consciously thought about. I just thought that um, in my head, everyone, if whoever believes in God worships God, and there are just different ways of worshiping that one God. That's it. That's all I thought about. And I just let it be and I went about my way. And so it's never been something that um yeah, it's there's curiosity in the sense that, oh, is this how you guys do it? Oh, okay, fine. Is that what happens? Is there a festival and or yeah, like a festival or something really momentous in that for a person belonging to another religion? I'd be curious about it, but there's nothing. I don't know. I guess the idea was that when you're around it so much, it becomes a part of the norm. So you don't really think too much about it. But when you ask me what my interaction has been, it's like, I really don't know because there hasn't been any conscious interaction. It's just been a part. And then I'm like, okay, if you ask me something, I wouldn't know. I might know a small tidbit, an obscure tidbit that nobody else might know because I've heard about it from a friend. But regularly, no, it just never came up initially. I became more curious with age, and because I lack tact, I would randomly ask questions which might make the other person uncomfortable. That came with time. I've learned to temper that a lot. But generally, it was never something that how do I put this? Luckily enough, my faith is the majority in India. So people were more aware of what was happening at my home than I was aware of their home. So there was a sense of understanding almost, right? So my interaction has been pretty okay. Like it's just a part of it. It was never, how do I put this? It was never odd. It was never something that stood out as something very different. It was just, like I said, different ways of going about your relationship with God. And that's it.
Yeah, T.
I forgot. I also went to a Quaker school for like 3 years in my youth.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I did.
Mm.
I
Wow.
forgot. Sorry. I don't remember much from it. I remember we would have like moments of silence, like we would gather somewhere and have like a morning moment of silence. But I don't remember anything else that might have been inspired from like Quaker teachings or anything outside of that. And I was kindergarten through second grade, so I was really young.
Yeah.
So I'm not even sure if they had anything more than that, but yeah, forgot about that.
Wow. That's so interesting. I'm always interested in the intersection of religion and education. Well, both how we teach religion, but also when you do have an educational institution that's rooted in a religious faith. Like that's always so interesting to me. Yeah.
I've had bad experiences with that. With that, I've
Yeah.
had bad experiences. But that has less to do with faith and more to do with people, society, politics, I guess.
Mm.
hmm
Less to
No,
do
that
with
tracks.
faith. Yeah.
That tracks. Um, I don't know why that tracks is my new saying. I don't even know where I picked that up from.
It fits.
Um, I guess, but it's annoying me actually. Anyway, okay, so for me, I've been doing interfaith work since I was 18. Like first semester, freshman year of college, my RA, she it was so weird because I went to a small school for college and and I grew up kind of in a small town. Like I don't want to like release my
Yeah.
information, but like where I grew up, like where I went to high school, I just grew up with the same people my entire life, the whole time. And so I didn't expect to go to college and meet someone from there, but my RA was from the same town as me. And so we clicked off of that and she knew I was Muslim and she asked me how that was. And I was like, girl, just imagine. Like, you know what the town is like. And she was really involved in interfaith work. So she is the one, she kept nagging me about it. She was like, come, you should come to this one event. Oh, we're having this one event. I'd be like, yeah, okay, okay. And she was an RA. I was like, she invited me to everything. I was like, it's fine. And then finally they had this one, like, I think it was like an interfaith brunch or breakfast that I went to. And we had conversations like this. And I was like pretty interested. Um, and I just started thinking about it and like growing up in the South, like I mean, growing up in America, you're surrounded by Christianity, but growing up in the South is different, it's a different beast, okay? It's like every street has like four churches or five churches. Um, and so I've had a lot of interactions with Christianity, and then I've had a lot of interactions with Judaism in college. Um, and then Hinduism and Buddhism and a lot of secularist faith as well. I feel like people in our generation are becoming more and more secular, so I had a lot of friends who were in that category. But yeah, I've just everything I do now just incorporates interfaith work. Our grad school, my application had to deal with religious pluralism. My fellowship had to deal with religious pluralism. My capstone would have had to deal with religious pluralism, but I was kind of, we don't got to talk about it. I was kind of pushed away from that. But I did talk about religious components in my capstone. So it was kind of one of those things of, it's just like a passion now, and I'm very lucky to have found a passion at 18 years old. Many people go their whole lives without finding it, but I have many experiences with other worldviews, and I hope to continue having many experiences with other worldviews. Um, I would like to go to Africa, and well, I've been to Africa, to Senegal, but I would like to experience, African traditional like religions and spiritualities. Well, not I think with colonialism, a lot of those spiritualities have suffered what is confinement, like they're stuck in the way that they can
Mm.
practice in this one area. And so I'd really like to go to Africa and study different spiritualities and different traditions, whether they're monotheistic or polytheistic, whatever. It's just interesting. But yeah, that's my answer. Um, okay, so moving on from there, now that we've talked about our worldviews, other people's worldviews, and how we interact with them, how have you viewed faith in a communal sense and an individual sense? Um, Here, I'll talk about spirituality real quick. I define spirituality as connecting with something outside yourself or connecting with something beyond you, around you, in order to better understand that within you. That's how I describe spirituality. So that involves the self-reflective part, but also the communal part of getting to know other people and strengthening your faith through the connections of others. So how have you viewed faith in those lenses? I know it's like a loaded question, and there's a lot to talk about when it comes to religion because religion is weaponized and politicized and all that. But like growing up, or even if you don't want to talk about growing up in the last few years, what has that experience been, communal and individual?
So I perceive like my faith in a communal and individual sense. I think, um, as I said earlier, the church building itself and my church family really feels like it's deeply connected to like my faith. I grew up like a lot of my childhood activities was connected to the church. I was in church school. I grew up as a Girl Scout and my troop was through my church actually. And then I also grew up singing in the church choir. So seeing those people through my different activities, seeing them on Sunday, it just the whole community felt like my faith. Um, but now I think it's increasingly become more important for me. I think probably around when I started college, undergrad, that I strengthened my individual faith. I think
Mm,
it's such like a personal journey, and since I used to equate my faith to the community, like the building itself, so much, I feel like when I was no longer able to go because I was in Virginia for undergrad, um, I wasn't that active going. Like I wasn't going to chapel on campus. I went a few times my freshman year. Um, but even like the virtual church that my home church would have, I wasn't logging into that either. So I really felt like that was a moment where I wasn't connecting with my faith as much as I could. And I still think that's something that I'm working to kind of correct now, even though I am back in my hometown. And I think I want to strengthen my journey with God because it is like a very personal thing, and it's like church doesn't end and your faith doesn't end when you leave church
mhm,
for the week. So I don't think I'm in a place right now to prioritize that mentally, but it is something that I want to do in the year 2025. I want to strengthen my personal connection with God, whether I'm joining a Bible study group or I'm just doing scriptures on my own. I think that's something that I really want to work on. But yeah, I see it in both ways.
mm,
So far, there are very few communal settings that I've enjoyed when it comes to faith. Because I feel that the judgment and the people in general put me off of what's happening. There are certain things that I do enjoy doing. Not enjoy, I feel more connected when I do them. For example, if I go to a temple and then everybody's praying, something about the aura in that place of worship moves me, and that gives me an overwhelming sense of emotion. Like all this built up emotion comes out at that point, and then after that I feel completely relieved. I think of that because everybody there is worshiping, though not interacting with me worshiping. So there's this overwhelming sense of energy. I might be, I don't know, that's just what I feel. But when it comes to smaller things, like we have these things called satsangs, and um, where people get together, it's like a potluck, but you're praying. Yeah. So people pray. I don't like those. I do not like those. It doesn't feel right with me. That's not how I do it. So I think it's an individual thing. I think it's a family thing. something that you do with people you're comfortable with, but also something that can really move you or help you connect with whatever you're trying to connect if you're with a lot of people who feel the same way. Interacting with people who belong to the same faith has never been my favorite thing, because even though I am Hindu, I view my relationship, my spiritual journey in a very different way from what other Hindus might, and that does not necessarily translate well, because I'll end up finding something rigid or hypocritical, or judgmental from the other end, and that just puts me off. So
Hmm.
mostly individual, but with trusted people or in an anonymized way with a group of people. That's a go for me.
Mm. I'm pretty similar to you in that sense, communally.
Mhm.
Individually, I'm good. I've always had a very strong spirituality, um, a very strong spirit. To me, it's like it's me, Allah, and that's it. Like I'm just trying to my best to live a life where I'm discovering and rediscovering myself and my community and the world. Like that's all I'm trying to do is continuously do that with compassion and respect and integrity. Like that hasn't really changed for me individually. Um, communally speaking, I'm not I'm not really with it either. Um, I'm trying to work on it for my recentering 2025 goal. One of it is to have a Muslim friend group, even if it's not like a real tight one, like just to be friend. I've never kept Muslim friends. Like I feel like the longest I've been friends with Muslims is like a month, honestly. Like I feel so uncomfortable. Part of it is what you said, Shreya, about like the rigidity of it and the hypocrisy and all that. But I think for me, it's just I've had better experiences on my own, spiritually speaking, than I have in communal senses. And so like I'm very uncomfortable in communal settings. Like I don't like praying with people. And in Islam, it's a big thing to pray with people. Like praying with people is like a strong way of strengthening your faith. If you're both gonna pray, just pray that. Like it's a strong way and I just can't do it. Like I used to get anxiety attacks when I was like I want to say like 17, 18, around that. No, Interfaith helped me. Let's say 17, 18 right now. But I used to get anxiety attacks when I would have to like, go to the mosque and pray with people. And like if you're praying, it's a very intimate internal like thing, and you don't want to be having an anxiety attack in the middle of it. Like, what's the point of praying at that point, you know? So I kind of just stayed away from communal things. Even now, like I'll talk to my parents about like if I have questions about Islam or if I'm like reading a bunch of books on Islam now and like I'll share it with them and talk to them about it and like an uncle here and there. But no, also I don't know. It's just not for me. And I want to get better at that because community is a really big part of my faith, my religion, my faith, spirituality, all of it. And it's the part that's been missing this whole time. So yeah, individually, I'm good, always been good. Communally, that's the struggle, but that's what I've been actively trying to work on for the last few months. So
Hmm.
ask me again in a year. We'll see how far I've come, but I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't feel any different. I still feel the same way I did a few months ago when I started. So maybe I'm going about it the wrong way.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's hard to find like minded people who belong to the same faith and let you be, and at the same time give you that sense of community. It's hard to find that. At least I found it really hard to find that. Something or the other
Yeah,
they say puts me off. And I'm like, sorry.
no, you froze for me, so I didn't know you were still talking. Um,
Sorry.
but it's not even that it's like it's not even that I want to find like-minded people. Um, I just okay. I said this in my last video, my last YouTube video. Like I have a community where I can go talk to people about faith. I have an interfaith community. I can go talk to them what I'm learning, what I enjoy, questions I have, whatever. I just want that same thing with a Muslim community because it's one thing to talk about your faith and your spirit with people who are just curious and want to learn more. And it's one thing to talk about it with someone who shares your same faith and understands the foundations that you're coming from. And so that's all I want. Like the only like-minded aspect I want with these people is that they're curious. You
Hmm.
ask questions and you're curious and you're not judgmental. That's all I care about. You're curious, you're not judgmental. We will be the best of friends. But every time I find someone curious but judgmental, or I find someone judgmental and not curious, like it's just it never really clicks for me, or it hasn't so far. I have faith that it will, but in my
Hmm.
past, it has not. Um, okay, moving on. So, how do you want to strengthen your worldview? It's a very simple question, but also a very loaded question. T, you kind of talked about it a little bit, like strengthening your relationship with God, if you want to dive into that more, or if you have another answer as well.
Yeah, I think that is the way that I would want to strengthen my worldview. I don't know. It's I want to be more informed about my personal religion. You know, like I grew up in church. I know the Bible to an extent. Um, but I just want to I want to know it better, and I
Hmm.
want that to help inform um just the way that I move, just so then I feel like I can be better to myself if I
Hmm.
connect more with it. And I think also, since a part of me, I grew up in the church, it was ingrained in me, oh yeah, you go to church, you have a good relationship with God. I feel bad that I don't have one. Well, I do have one, but hold up. I have a relationship, but it's just not as strong as I would like it to be. So I think my worldview could grow a lot if I do that.
Hmm.
But also, I don't know. So
Hmm.
yes, it's confusing.
Does not knowing or like the confusion frustrate you, or do you kind of just like set it aside and like deal with it later?
I so far I've been setting it aside and not
Okay.
dealing with it. But I just feel like mentally there's like a million other things that feel more like not important, but they just feel more immediate, that needs more
Hmm.
immediate attention. And I haven't given my faith a fair shot at really being prioritized. And that's something I want to do this year, but it just, yeah. And I think the not knowing comes from the not being very strong within it.
Hmm.
Hmm. I have one more question. The not being very strong within it, you think that stems from the lack of knowledge you feel you have about your religion or your faith?
A little bit, but I think more so the fact that I viewed it more as a communal thing. And then when I wasn't around the community as much,
Hmm.
I had to rely on the individual, but then my individual walk with faith wasn't that strong. And I
Hmm.
kind of let it go since I went to college. So that's been 6 years roughly now. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. I was gonna say this earlier when you spoke, and then I forgot because I was listening to you. Um, but one thing I used to say a lot is that I think it's so funny how we teach religion as a communal thing first and then an individual thing for the most part. At least in America, I can only speak to, but I'm sure worldwide. Like we teach kids, oh, go pray together, oh, go to church or go to the synagogue, go with your church friends, go on a camp, and then it's like you're 18 years old and it's like, okay, what did I learn from that individually? And of course, that's generally speaking. Like, there's different pockets where it's the opposite. But for the most part, we value so much communal faith, or we value communal faith so much with our like young kids that by the time they grow up, they don't know how to do it individually. Because I was pretty stuck too until I started doing interfaith work. But it's always funny to me because I'm like, it's kind of backwards. I think it should be flipped, but who knows?
That's really interesting because a lot of people my age and basically my generation, they there's a dichotomy, at least in my community, where there's this thing where everybody believes or is okay with going to the temple or praying because their parents are telling them to. But being too involved is a sign of being regressive.
I understand that.
So suppose you end up saying something like, this is what I think, this is what I believe, they're going to be like, oh, creep, okay, weirdo alert, or something like that. So you immediately are downgraded in their hierarchy. So it's very interesting. um I feel I'm slightly different in that sense because my parents always made it an individual experience for me. That it's
Hmm.
community in the sense that, okay, you pray, but they don't tell you what to pray after a certain age. They say you pray for whatever you want, however you want, but you pray at this time every day. We'll all do this, but within that sense, you're doing it together or whenever you want to. So I think that made it more individual.
Hmm.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. I think oh, well, you didn't answer, you expanded on what we were talking about, but what about you strengthening your worldview? How do you want to strengthen it? If you do, if you don't want to, then that's fair too, but how would you like to?
I've been meaning to for a while. And this usually started um, when I started consciously interacting with people from other faiths. That's where it started. I had this one experience when I was in college, first year of college, and that's when I realized that there's a difference in how you view your faith, how the other person views their faith, and that it doesn't necessarily have to be congruent all the time, the way I thought. Um, and I realized that it wasn't a negative thing, but I realized that for me to be strong with my faith or in my faith, I need to know my faith. It's
Hmm.
one thing to have your own understanding of what's happening. It's another thing to know that this is my understanding, but I also know what the traditional thing is. Because when you're questioned about things that are frowned upon by people generally in society, you need to be able to say why. And this came up very well when in India we have this thing called the Shabrimala. It's a temple. And there women are not allowed to go inside that temple. Menstruating women are not allowed to go inside that temple. So either you need to go in before you when you're a child, that is before you hit puberty, or after menopause. um, and there was this huge debate where somebody filed a case saying that women should be allowed inside, and there was my views on it were conflicting because at one point I was on one side and the other point I started turning to the other side and I was like, okay, what's going on? And I realized that I don't know enough about my faith, the origins of my faith, to be able to say something decisively
Hmm.
about it. So I want to be able to strengthen that. There is a language barrier because I don't know Sanskrit, and I do not want to rely on some East India company translation of my religious text. So yeah, I want to learn more about it to understand what I agree with, what I don't agree with, and how that reconciles with what I believe in.
Hmm. Um, for me, it's similar to both of you, what you guys just said. I just want a more holistic understanding of my religion, but not the religion itself, more so the spread and the humanization of the religion, if that makes sense. Like, I've read many hadiths, I've read the Quran twice. The Quran is short though, it's like 114 chapters. Like, I read it twice. Um, but it's similar to what you said, Shreya. Like, going into it, I knew I was relying on someone else's translation. Every human being is biased. B, I also understand the fact that Islam has been around for centuries. So it's safe to assume that there's been misinterpretations and weaponizations. And then, like, C, with the Quran, I learned this by the time I think I was like a sophomore, a junior. I think I was like a junior in college or a sophomore. Um, and it was the first time I was reading the Quran. And I realized that you can't read the Quran by itself because the Quran was revealed to the Prophet over the span of like 32 years, I think. And so it's really important to understand the historical context. So you have to read the Quran with hadiths. But then the thing with hadiths is, depending on the branch of Islam that you follow, you believe that certain hadiths are true and certain aren't. And hadiths are stories of the Prophet. So like the prophet didn't write down the stories of his life. He didn't want to be idolized, nothing. He was just a messenger. So when he died, all these people around him started writing stories about him and what he's done, hadiths. Some people lie, some people don't. Some political organizations uplift certain hadiths, some don't. And so I've been reading a lot, like the book I'm reading now is called Islam Without Extremes, and it's giving me a better understanding of the spread of Islam as a whole, which I think I needed to better understand. Um, oh, sorry, thumbs up emoji came up. Um, which I think I needed to better understand my religion because I was kind of hitting a wall at a certain point, honestly. Like if you do like 5, 6 years of interfaith work, at a certain point, I just felt like I was stuck with my own religion. Um, and I realized it's because I didn't have the quote unquote academic historical knowledge that I needed to. And now that I'm understanding how the religion spread, the different conflicts that happened, the different politics that went into it, it's better for me to be like, oh, that one hadith was influenced here. Oh, that one part of the Quran is always mentioned because of the Ottoman Empire, because of this dictator. Like it makes more sense. Also, because I'm Muslim, since 9/11, I've always had to combat all the like, are you a terrorist? Oh my God, Islam is so evil, right? So like it's always been something I've had to combat. It never really bothered me. It just always confused me because I'm like, we sit together in math class. I be helping you with your algebra. Like, but you're telling me I go home after school and I build a bomb in my book bag. Like it always confused me the thought process people had. So I figured if I could better understand and explain Islam, its origins, and the way that it's spread and how we've gotten to where we are now, then it's better, I can better combat those ignorant, well, oftentimes, scared comments because they're scared of the unknown. So that's why I want to strengthen my worldview. Um, with that said, I brought up some negative experiences. What negative experiences have you guys had regarding faith, whether it's within your faith, like your faith community, or outside your faith community? Because, like I said, religion has been weaponized. Religion, I believe, religion and love are the two things that you can take to manipulate people. It's so easy to do with those two. Um, so with all that negativity that can come from religion, alongside the positivity, but with this negativity specifically, oh my God, with this negativity specifically, what experiences have you had and how have you healed for them? If you have, if you haven't healed from them, what do you think the next step is for you to heal from? Loaded question. I know. Take your time.
I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. I can't think of anything else. I think outside of that, my religion and like my faith have always kind of been seen in a positive aspect. So, which I guess I'm grateful for. But yeah.
Oh, weak. What about you, Shreya? What negative experiences have you had? And how have you healed or not healed or want to heal?
Hmm. What? I have had quite a few negative experiences. Again, not with faith, but with people. Um, every year there is this one puja that we do for this particular deity, and all my bad experiences circle around menstruation for some reason. So, I was maybe 12, I think, and I just like hit puberty and things like that. And when you go for this particular prayer, it's a very austere thing in the sense that you need to wash your clothes beforehand. It shouldn't touch other clothes. It should be clean and all that stuff. And I got my period. So I was just there, sitting there, and everybody refused to touch me. Like I was some sort of dirt on their shoe. And that really, really bothered me. It really bothered me. And I was like, okay, fine, I get it. You're supposed to, you're doing this because of this particular puja, and therefore um you're focused on that thing. So there was this one time when it was happening, I think it was some elderly person in my family. I don't know who. Some lady who was elderly lady, my grandmother's sisters or somebody. I don't know who. I don't even remember. I just remember this one person. They came in and I don't know. I touched something or I did something, and they got so angry. They just, I don't know. They flung their hand out, or they basically, something happened, and I felt so bad. I was like, at that point, I felt that if God does not believe that I am worthy of being touched, then why should I pray to such a God? You know?
Mm.
Hmm.
And then it put me off. I don't think I've ever attended one of those after that. I was like, no, I'm not going. I'm just not going to
Yeah.
that particular puja. I understand, I believe in it, everything. I respect it, but I'm not going there. Because if people truly believe that you can treat another person so poorly just because they're going through a biological process, then I don't want to be around those people, because I know for sure that God never said that.
Sure.
So yeah, that really puts me off. Yeah.
Hmm. Um,
Which is why I want to learn more
th-
about my faith so that I can understand where this stuff is coming from.
there's very it's very similar in Islam.
Mm-hmm.
I do really need to look into like menstruation in Islam. I don't know why I haven't yet. I'll add it to my list. But they say, I remember growing up, we were told, oh yeah, because like when you're on your period in Islam, you don't fast, you don't pray, you don't touch the Quran, like you just don't do any of that. You can go to a mosque, but like I guess it depends on what community you're part of. But we were told, I remember like oh you're not holy, like you're dirty. Like those words specifically being used. And I was like I was thinking in my head, I'm like, you sound dumb. Like I can't put my finger on it and I can't explain why you're dumb, but you sound dumb. And then as I've gotten older, I learned a little bit more, and it's like you don't fast because you're losing so much blood and it's not healthy for you. Just like you don't fast when you're pregnant, just like you don't fast if you're sick, like you have diabetes. Like my dad has diabetes, he still fasts, but like he's not technically supposed to because of his health, you know? Like there's all these reasons as to why you don't do a certain thing, and Islam was rooted in the fact of, it honestly is an inclusive religion. It had pluralistic roots in Medina. And so like the way we communicate with each other, like the words we say, especially to young, impressionable children, matters. Telling me I'm dirty or unholy or not pure, like that's crazy. That's a crazy thing to say to me. And oh yeah, but after those 3 to 5 days, sometimes 7 days, you're fine. Like what? What changed? Like tell me what changed in my personality in my head for me to be like perfectly fine after that. But that's not a
It,
negative experience. Oh, go ahead.
no, I'm so sorry. I couldn't agree more. So I impulse. Continue.
That's fair. I was just gonna say like that's not the negative experience I had.
Mm.
That was one of those things where there was a lot of things growing up going to Quran class. First off, I'll start by saying my Quran class, the uncles and aunts who take part in it, I have a lot of respect for them because it's a lot of kids and they do it for free. They just show up, they created it Saturday, Sunday, 10 to 1, help us learn Arabic, read the Quran, teach us hadiths, how to pray, all that stuff. So I have a lot of respect for them because I know that's hard. Like it's not an easy thing to do. With that said, there's a lot of experiences that I had that really put me off because basically I was a very curious kid. I'm a very curious person. And I asked a lot of questions. I asked a lot of questions. And at first it would be like I would get a short reply to my questions and then I'd push more. And then the reply just didn't make sense, so I'd ask another question. And then there was this one moment I asked the question and I got yelled at for asking the question. And I remember like I don't like being yelled at. I never have. It upsets me. It just shakes my nervous system. Like I can't function properly. And I remember I'm like I was just asking a question because I was curious. Like what? Like just because you don't know the answer to the question or just because you don't like the question I'm asking doesn't make my question any less valid. I think I was in like third grade, and I had asked because in Islam, you're not supposed to personify God. You don't personify Allah at all whatsoever. That's also why we say Allah, because Allah in Arabic is God, and there's no um, feminine or masculine descriptions of God, like God, goddess. It's just Allah. And so when I was learning that, I was like 8, 9, and I was like, so then why do we say he? Like, if we're not supposed to personify God, why do we use he when we're like just like, oh yeah, he this, he that? Um, and my teacher had answered, but not really answered. He said something along the lines of like, it just is. And that's never an answer I'm satisfied is with ever. So I asked again, and then he yelled at me, and I was like, bet. He never got another question out of my mouth. I promise you. Not a single one. Because I was like, if you're not going to be able to answer my questions, I'll go somewhere else that will. And I did. Um, and it was funny because a few years ago, my dad was like, he had went to go see the uncle I'm talking about. And he was like, how's Rose? She's still asking all those questions? And I'm like, dang, I really left an impression on you. Sorry, maybe you should have gone back and learned a little bit more. But like those experiences of like being told my questions were wrong or as if my questions were a hindrance, it really bothered me, and I think that's what pushed me further away from the communal aspect of faith because then I just went and I Googled the answer myself or I read a book about it, like or I looked up a video. And so I kind of have this like I don't think pride is the word, but I'm gonna use pride. I kind of have this pride of like, I'll just find the answer myself. I don't need to ask. But it's because of the fact that I got yelled at a couple of times where I was like, oh, okay, my curiosity is a bad thing in this faith. And it's not, and I know it's not, but it's the experience I had when I was 8 or 9. And now I'm 24 and I still don't like asking questions because even when I was in college, I asked a question. I asked this Muslim in my college, there's this Muslim woman who's a teacher. She's very smart woman. And I had just learned about like temporary marriages or something in like the Shia faith. And I went up to her at one of these interfaith breakfasts and I was like, oh, I just watched this movie and it brought this up. Could you tell me a little bit more about that? And she's like, oh, well, we don't believe in that. And after that, I just didn't listen to what she said because I was like, I didn't ask you what we believed in. I asked you to explain what it was, okay? Like, and this was like the first or second conversation I had with this woman. So honestly, my negative experiences are just for my curiosity being shut down. And
Mm.
now I'm at a point where it's like I need to heal from that because people have the answers if you just ask the right people. And to get to the right people, you have to go through a few of the bad people. So I got to figure out how to process the negative responses first before I move forward.
Interesting. Just one couple of things. One, I just had a flashbulb memory, a flashback of what happened. It wasn't an elderly lady, it was my mother.
Oh, okay.
Okay. My sweet, sweet mother, she was probably really tensed and she was trying to wear a sari or something. And the sari was pure and I wasn't. And I was sitting close to the sari, so she lost it on me. And that just hurt my feelings because my mother didn't want to touch me. And I was like, and I was yelled at for just existing. So that, not some elderly lady, not my grandmother's sisters, they're all very kind and sweet. So was my grandmother, so was my mom, but that. Second, interesting that you said that people who, like both of you mentioned those who are in a position who would impart knowledge about faith, right? In some
Hmm.
capacity or the other. Interestingly enough, I've never had a bad experience with someone who imparts knowledge about faith. There was this one time
Hmm.
we were doing a ritual at home, and it was basically like a funeral right sort of thing, ancestral this thing every year when every year we do it. And then I was really curious, so I was just standing there and I was like, why are you doing that? And that man looked at me. Normally I get ignored. He looked at me and he answered my question, and then I asked another question. He answered my question, and my dad is like, let us finish. And then he's like, no, no, curiosity is good. It's good that you're asking questions. And I was like,
Hmm.
I like you. But most people, at least those who are pundits or who know a lot about what they're doing and what they believe in, they're usually, at least the people I've come across, have been more open to speaking about it, answering questions. So yeah, interesting. Anyway, sorry.
I hope to have that experience one day. I truly do. Um, so I have one last question that I didn't prep you guys for.
Oh, Okay.
It's nothing crazy. It really isn't. Because this is the end of the dialogue. We have like one last question, but um, how do you guys feel? Because this is y'all's like first interfaith dialogue, and I know y'all might have been a little bit nervous, specifically T. Just a little bit nervous, just a little bit nervous going into this, and like a little confused. But now that it's basically done, how are you guys feeling? What are your thoughts moving forward? What were your thoughts coming into it, and then what are your thoughts now and moving forward? Take your time, no rush.
Wait, let me remind what were our thoughts coming in and what are
Now
our thoughts
and moving
going
forward.
forward about the discussion.
Yeah, it can be about the discussion itself, of course. Also about like interfaith as a whole, just these dialogues, like how your worldview interacts with others. Whatever you're thinking, there's no limit.
I feel like it was a very good discussion. I actually enjoyed it. Oh.
Y'all saw my hands were like this. Sorry, start over.
I feel like this was a very good discussion. I felt very, obviously y'all are my friends, but I felt very comfortable. Um, on my day to day, I don't think I actually talk a lot about my faith. So I think this is something that I would definitely be open to doing more of, because I feel like I'm getting closer to wanting to strengthen my journey through these discussions. Hearing you guys talk about your experiences makes me excited to get more in touch with my faith as well. So yeah, I was a little nervous coming in just because I don't know. I didn't know what to expect. I had the questions, but I didn't really know what to expect at the same time. But yeah, it was a good experience.
I love that you said that because I forgot to mention, not necessarily a podcast, but to y'all in general. There's so many people, like I want to say like 50% of the people I talk to about interfaith work and like doing an interfaith dialogue or anything with interfaith, they're like, oh, I don't know. And a lot of times when they start getting into it and I ask them, they're like, I just didn't want to lose part of my faith. They're like, I just, I just didn't know like what learning about a Christian or an agnostic person would do to my faith. Like it's just, I want to say 50% of people are just like, they want to keep their faith quote unquote pure. Like they just want to keep their faith theirs. And so they don't realize it until they start taking part in it that by having these discussions with people of other faiths, having these interfaith experiences helps you strengthen your own faith. Like I'm not going I don't know who it was. Someone was like, "Oh, it was a parent and they were like, "Oh, my child's Christian." Like she doesn't do that. And I was like, "She can still be Christian." She'll be I promise she can still be Christian. And I realize a lot of people have the hesitancy of like the fear of like, oh, okay, well, if I or like someone I know starts learning about Hinduism or Christianity, then they're going to switch to Hinduism or Christianity.
Mm.
And it's like, that's not what an interfaith dialogue is for. It's for all people of different faiths coming together to talk about those faiths and grow from it. So I'm happy you brought that up. That's a really good point. What about you, Shreya? What were your thoughts
Mm,
coming into this and moving
okay.
forward?
Okay. Coming into this, I've always loved talking about my faith because I feel that it's very misunderstood in the sense that people don't understand what we're doing. People don't understand how um, Hindus connect with God through, let's say, praying to a deity or an idol. They think it doesn't really translate well, especially when you're coming from
Hmm.
an Abrahamic religion. It doesn't translate very well. So I've always been happy to answer questions. And if they ask me a question I don't know the answer to, I'd be like, thank you. New point for research. I'm going to find out. So I've always enjoyed it. I've always enjoyed hearing as well. But it's always been through odd conversations and never through an official interfaith dialogue or anything of that sort. Um, yeah, so yeah, I came in excited to learn more. I came in excited to talk, so I was happy coming in. Coming in, I was unsure of the level of discussion we were going to have, in the sense of how deep are we going to go into the nitty-gritties of our faith. What exactly are we
Hmm.
discussing? Exactly. I mean, are we discussing about the experience of being Hindu, the religion, or the way of life, or are we talking about how you connect with God in a more secular sense. I didn't understand where we're going with it. So yeah, what was the next question?
Moving forward.
Moving forward, I would like us to have a deeper conversation. I'd like to learn more about how you guys view things. How is that different from the way I view things? How do we view things like life and death?
Mhm.
Um, and actions and the consequences of our actions. Yeah, how we view ourselves as people, as individuals, and how has faith have anything to do with that? Maybe like a part two. It's a super interesting
Do not,
conversation.
do not threaten me with a good time because I was literally gonna be like, this can be a series. We can do monthly
It's
interfaith
great,
dialogues depending on
honestly.
literally, we can do life and death for the next one. We can do relationships for the next one. We can do parenthood for the next one. Like I told you guys earlier, and for anyone listening, an interfaith dialogue is whatever it is in that specific dialogue. You don't have the same interfaith dialogue every single time because it's different people with different worldviews or the same people with their worldviews shifted or expanded on. So like, if you want this to be a series, don't threaten me with a good time. Y'all
Voting
know
already.
you outnumber T, so even if you didn't want it, it's happening. Sounds good. But yes, I mean, I'm happy you guys liked it. I have missed interfaith dialogues. I haven't done one since like 2022. It's 2025 now. I graduated in 2022, and I did one for um my job at the time. I had an interfaith dialogue, so I haven't done one in a long time. I love them. Always very rejuvenating. But yeah, with that said, to close out for this interfaith dialogue. If someone wanted to get to know your worldview better, what resources would you recommend for them to do so? Just a resource or two. For me, as a Muslim, I there are two books I would recommend because I think it's important for any religion, but especially for the Abrahamic religions because they can be so similar and intertwined. I think it's really important to understand the religion itself, but then also the historical aspect of it, like with what is it, the Crusades, or like with the different empires, how have they interacted? So first, I would recommend Muhammad the World Changer, an intimate portrait by Mohammed Jabari. And it's basically, I think that's a really good start to understanding the religion. It's the story of the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and how basically from birth to, or I guess pre-birth, because it talks about like his whole family lineage, but how the Quran was revealed to him and the experiences he had, and like why certain passages were revealed at certain times and all this stuff. So it helps you get the hadiths and the Quran in one. It's not the Quran, it's not hadiths, but it's a man who has analyzed the Quran and the hadiths since I think he memorized it when he was like 11 or 12. So he's been studying this for a really long time. And it's a really beautiful book, beautifully written. And then the second one is Islam Without Extremes by Mustafa Akil. I mentioned it earlier, but I think that gives a very good explanation of the historical context of Islam, and how the spread of religion has influenced people's perception of Islam and also like people's perceptions of Islam who are Muslim and who are not Muslim and the different like experiences that people have had. So those are the two books I would recommend if you're interested in learning more about Islam.
I can answer this question now. I do not have resources, but I can point you the right direction. Read more about Advaita Vedanta if you want to know more about my faith. Advaita Vedanta.
Spell that out for them real quick.
Advaita space Vedanta. Advaita
Okay.
Vedanta. Mm.
What is that? Is that like a person or a book or
No, it's a school of philosophy.
okay.
So basically, it talks about the non-dual nature of the individual and of ultimate reality of Atma, which is basically yourself. Anyway,
Okay.
it's super interesting.
Yeah.
Um, for me, I'm not entirely sure when I when I think of a resource, but I would say gospel music just because when I listen to gospel music, the feelings that I feel in the lyrics, the feeling that I get from that is how I feel when I'm hearing like a sermon in church.
Hmm.
So, yes, that's what I'll say.
Anytime I've been to church, that choir
Mm,
is gonna make you feel things every time.
Holy Ghost and all, yes.
Um, when I was in university, first year I went to I think it was Catholic, I'm not sure, Catholic college, and I attended one of their, what do you call them? It's not a sermon. They were singing, and it was very nice, very peaceful. Yeah,
Hmm.
those are nice.
That's how I feel listening to Quran. It's like it's literally it sounds like someone singing. Like it's just so nice. Um, yeah. Well, that's the end, guys. You guys did it. Your first interfaith dialogue. Woo! I'm making it a big deal because to me it's a big deal, but it doesn't have to be a big deal to y'all.
No, it
This
was
is
a
just
it
fun to
was
me.
an enlightening conversation. It made me feel good, and I want to do more. So
Yes.
So, listeners, we will be having interfaith dialogue series. I just have
yes,
to plan that out first and organize that, but I'm very excited for that. And I did really enjoy getting to know y'all's worldview a little bit more. I mean, I kind of already knew it. We've had a little bit of conversations here and there, just a little bit, but it's nice actually making space to have these conversations. So, with that said, till next time.
next time,
Bye.
bye.
Bye.